Hello, I've got some art supplies to show you today. Most of these are from Jackson's Art, plus a new book. First of all, I decided to try out a canvas from Jackson's, which comes with its own frame. I can't fit it all in shot, I'm afraid. So, we've got a pretty sturdy canvas. The canvases come in two thicknesses, and this is the thicker of them. And it looks like pretty good construction. These are the details. So it's 320 grams per square metre, medium texture cotton canvas. And it's been primed to 480 grams per square metre, suitable for oil and acrylic paintings. Yeah, so the depth is 38 millimetres. And then the frame seems pretty nice quality. That's the back of it. So I'm imagining these are the screws to secure into the back of the canvas once you're done. And then two hanging plates. There's 4 screws but 8 holes, so maybe these are just for the hanging plates and you provide your own. And then that's the spacing that you've got between the frame and the canvas when you're done. This is a 40 by 50 centimetre canvas, and this costs £42, which isn't a whole lot different from the framing costs that I would have for it, but I've got the ease of not needing to take it to the picture framers. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with that. I quite like that. And then in my recent video on the new Caran Neoarts, I'd had my solvents out to see how the Neoarts dissolved. And I'd also been talking about using the solvents with coloured pencils. So for my coloured pencil drawings in the past, I've used this paper, Strathmore Drawing Paper. And it's kind of an off-white colour. But I'd found it fine for coloured pencil stuff. Then I'd fallen down a little bit of a coloured pencil rabbit hole, and I'd been looking at what papers other people use. And I decided that while Jackson's Art has got a paper sale on at the moment, I'd try out a couple of different papers. I know that some artists use hot press watercolour paper, but also Bristol paper was used a lot. I think there's 2 different kinds of Bristol paper. There's a vellum surface, which I think is a bit more textured, and then just a smooth Bristol paper. And then there's different grades of Bristol paper, well, by Strathmore at least. I think they've got a 300, 400 and 500 series. So I decided just to try the middle one out. So it's not pure white. That's the colour of the Strathmore drawing paper. So it's definitely whiter than that. But I think this Canson Bristol is pure white, yeah. And that's lovely thick paper. So that's definitely got some tooth. And it's got more tooth than the Strathmore drawing paper. But this Canson one is completely smooth. It's thinner paper. I'll get some coloured pencils out later in the video anyway and have a play with them. And then I'm really excited about this book. This is a Rowney sketchbook, and it's A3 size, and it's 160 grams per square metre paper. What storage? I'd seen recently an artist who I follow on Instagram using one of these, and it just really appealed to me at this size. I'm going to have to try and scroll through Instagram and find her name. I can't remember it, I'm afraid. But I can't get over the size of this. I mean, that's an A2 sheet if you use a double spread. I can remember when I got my first A4 sketchbook, this Talon's Art Creations one, and it just seemed like that. I mean, that seemed big at the time. But I guess since doing my course in St Ives and working on bigger canvases, the size thing doesn't scare me quite so much now. So I'm definitely going to be chucking some paint at this. And it's definitely not for best art. This is for being really, really loose. Probably for use with acrylics actually. And lots of colour and big bold brush strokes. And I'm sure the paper will go crinkly. But yeah, this is for fun. And then talking of acrylic paints, I did a video recently on some golden fluid paints for more detailed acrylic paintings or details, and they were wonderful. But Jackson's Art had sent me a free gift sample pack of different golden paints, and that was my first chance trying out Golden's SoFlat paints. I absolutely loved the sample that I'd tried out, and they reminded me an awful lot of Lefranc Bourgeois Flashe paints. I've got a number of these and I really like them because they dry really smooth and matte, but also mixed media sticks really well to the surface. So coloured pencils and Neocolors, that kind of thing. They all lay down superbly well over Flashe paint and better than they do over regular acrylics and acrylic wash paints. I really like the jar format of these as well. Just having them open, I don't need to decant any of the paint anywhere else unless I want to mix up a colour. So I've got on really well with these and decided to buy a few of the Golden SoFlat paints in colours that I don't have in Flashe paints. And also these were on sale at Jackson's as well. They're quite pricey, but this is their second size up, 118ml tubs. And it's a bit of a random sale, they're not all reduced the same amount, but quite a few of the 118ml tubs are currently around the same price as the smaller size 59ml tubs. So that's Titan Violet Pale, Yellow Oxide, Turquoise and Neutral Grey. And then this little set was also on offer. I think it's called, yeah, the Zing set. I really wanted some of the colours out of here, the cobalt teal, the naphthol pink and the red violet, plus the cadmium orange. But some of these were quite expensive colours, especially the cobalt teal and the cadmium orange. I think this set was £41 or £42 rather than 60 something that it is normally. So I decided to go for the whole thing. So naphthol pink, cadmium orange, bismuth vanadate yellow, yellow green, cobalt teal and red violet. And then in the box there's also a little leaflet showing the whole range of the Golden SoFlats. The thing I liked about these, and also the Flashe paints, are that quite a high proportion of them are opaque. So I'll open everything else up and then I'll swatch some of these out. I'll link to a couple of videos down below where I've talked about acrylics and some of the differences between the different kinds of acrylics. Then I'd got one more golden fluid acrylic, the green gold. And then after looking into the Neocolors and the Neoarts so much recently, I bought a Neocolor 2 Night Blue because I hadn't realised this colour even existed. And then I replaced my lost Neocolor 2 Moss Green. I think this is one of the most useful greens for landscapes in the Neocolor 2 range. And finally from Jackson's, I decided to try out a Caran Pablo. I was talking about coloured pencils with somebody and the Pablos had cropped up and I've never tried one out before. I wanted a light blue for skies to go in my art travel set so that I don't keep pinching them out of my main sets at home. So I'll have a scribble with this later as well and compare it to some of the other pencils that I've got. And then finally I'll just show you this book. It's Studios of Their Own by Alex Johnson and it's illustrated by James Osers. A year or two ago I bought another book by these two, Rooms of Their Own, Where Great Writers Write, and I'd mainly bought it for the illustrations, to be honest. I like the really sketchy, loose style, and not having everything perfect in it. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this book. And I'd copied this illustration from it, for example, just a way of practicing loosening up and seeing how other people go about it. So when I was in the St Ives Tate last month, I'd bought this book in the shop there and sat in the cafe overlooking the sea, really enjoying this book. And I also liked the fact that it had got Barbara Hepworth's garden and studio on the front cover where I'd just been. So a similar style of illustrations, and you've got a nice range of artists there. And then the book takes a look at each of their studios and talks about them a little bit. I was reading about Francis Bacon, and I don't know anything about him at all really. So after I'd read about him, I looked up online, and his whole studio has been recreated and preserved, and I saw photos of it, and yeah, it was really quite chaotic and super interesting. So I think this book will be quite a good education for me, because I'm not really that familiar with lots of artists. And yeah, as I've been going through, I've been looking up each artist online, and it's been really fun. David Hockney painting plein air, and Barbara Hepworth's garden and studio, which I've shown in previous videos. So yeah, another lovely book in that set. So I think I'm going to do my acrylic paint swatching in this new giant Daler Rowney sketchbook. I always have to take the stickers off things first. Stickers on books irritate me so much. It's the first thing I do. I'll take a look at these Golden SoFlats first. Oh, that's a nice colour. Actually, I'm just gonna I'll start the way I mean to go on in this book, which is kind of big and messy. That is a great colour. It's almost like a fluorescent, but it's actually got a high Lightfast rating. It's an ASTM2. So I'm delighted about that. I'll probably cover these names up later with more layers of paint, so this can actually be part of a picture. I do have one fluorescent, and that's Flashe Paint's Fluorescent Pink, and that's Fugitive. So obviously it doesn't have quite the same level of brightness. And the fluorescents as well are more translucent. That almost hurts my eyes. I don't know why. This makes me feel kind of like a school teacher doing the big register books or something. But it's just so pleasing. Cadmium orange. I think this is actually the first cadmium orange I've owned in any medium. That's beautifully bright again. You can see some minor brush lines, but it is a pretty smooth paint. Bismuth vanadate yellow. This is a more translucent one. Straight out of the tub, the SoFlats are more runny than the Lefranc Bourgeois Flashe paints. You can see the SoFlats move around and the Flashe paints are much thicker, though these have thickened up slightly since I've had them, which I don't know, I've had them a good year. This is the colour in the set that I don't love. It's the yellow green. So I'm just going to start squidging them up a bit. I just don't like really bright greens like this. I think I'd be tempted to put something in it and tone it down more along the lines of a kind of a more olivey green. Cobalt teal. Now this one is classed as an opaque one, but painting it out it's slightly translucent, so I'm just wondering if I actually need to give the paint a good stir. I'll just give it a mix up with a kebab stick. It doesn't feel hugely thicker at the bottom than the top, but no, it's still slightly transparent. In this gorgeous red violet shade. See, that one feels about the same opacity as the cobalt teal, whereas that's marked as semi-transparent, or is that semi-opaque? So that's those ones. I'm just going to squash the other four in down here. So I've got the N8 neutral grey. It's got that film over the top of this one. This is obviously a completely lazy convenience colour. That one took the plastic layer off with it. I quite like this colour. It's Titan Violet Pale, and I've got this in Golden's Heavy Body Acrylic as well. I use it for adding a bit of interest to skies and seas. Interestingly, this is just white mixed with PR101, so something like the more violet leaning Caput Mortems. Right, I've run out of room, so I'm just going to start filling in gaps. Wow, that's such a rich colour. Let's do. So this is just classed as turquoise. Let's see what's in it. It's PB15:3, phthalo blue, PG7, phthalo green, and PW6, white. So again, this is classed as opaque. It's not fully opaque when I go over the writing. And then the last of the SoFlats is the yellow oxide, which I think definitely needs a stir up because it seems really thin. And then I'll just swatch out this golden fluid acrylic in green gold, which is PY150, PG36 and PY175. I was painting with my new ones of these the other day, and I really like the ability to just drop out like a single drop and do mixing and things with that. It's so controlled and I feel like I'm not wasting a lot of acrylic. And this is a transparent one. So these ones that I laid down first are dry already. Same as the Flashe paint. I'm just going to paint out some regular acrylic paint up here. And then I can do a comparison between the SoFlat, the Flashe and regular acrylic and put down a few different mediums on top. This is just a pink that I was mixing up from Winsor & Newton Galleria paints. So just to comment on the paper, which was the Daler and Rowney's Artist Sketchbook. The paint's laid down super nicely on it, but it has crinkled it up a little bit. I'll show you on the back. I anticipated that, as it's just 160 grams per square metre. Next up, I'll just have a play with these coloured pencil papers. So this is the Canson Bristol and this is the smoothest. I probably use my Luminance pencils the most, so I'll have a play with those first of all. Yeah, that's really, really smooth. I guess depending on how you blend your pencils will dictate to some extent how much tooth you need. Because if you want to keep blending over the top, you're going to run out of tooth. So the paper will run out of grippiness more quickly on these very smooth papers. So I'm not on the third pass, I can't really grip onto the paper anymore. But I don't really blend like that in my colour drawing anyway. I tend to use solvent on a base layer and then go over the top. I'll just show you what I mean about the solvent. So this is Zest It. So you can use that to smooth out the look a bit. And then it kind of re-establishes the tooth of the paper a little bit. So with a third pass, I can still feel the grippiness of the paper a bit there. So I'll just have a play on the Bristol Vellum surface, which is the 400 series. I'll just show you what it looks like. So you can see the difference there at laydown, there's quite a lot. And if I do the same on Strathmore drawing paper, that's a lot more similar to the Vellum Bristol. The Bristol's definitely got a lot more grip than the drawing paper. So with my third pass on this, I've still got, I can still feel a bit of tooth, but it's definitely getting filled in. So by the third pass, there wasn't actually a huge amount of difference between these two. But with these three here, the same thing's been done, just 3 passes with coloured pencil. And you can see how some of the white is still showing through on the Bristol Vellum and the drawing paper. But there's much less colour of the paper showing through on the smooth Bristol. I was just having a little play around to see which of my favourite softer pencils, so the Derwent Lightfast, the Luminance and the Derwent Drawing, which of them blended down best with the Zest-It, and they were all actually pretty good, or pretty equal. And the Pablo seems a nice pigmented pencil, but harder than these other 3. So I've got out Faber-Castell Polychromos. And they feel more comparable in the hardness and how much pressure it takes to lay them down. It's going to be harder to tell with these paler colours, but I will just try those with the solvent as well. Whoops, just splashed everywhere. Yeah, that dissolves all right. So those all dissolve quite well. So I'd be happy using this Vellum Bristol. I could get smooth enough blends. And yeah, it feels like quite nice paper to work on, really. One other thing to mention though is that these Pablos aren't as Lightfast across the whole range as the Luminance are. So this bluish pale is 1 star, whereas my Luminance light cobalt blue is Lightfast 1 on the ASTM Lightfast measure, which is the highest. And then just to show you the white over the top of these. So that grips pretty well once the solvent's evaporated. So if I had done a blend kind of with layering up pencils instead, I mean, I haven't fully burnished that out there, but it's starting to fill up the tooth. When I go over with the white, it doesn't stick as well. I mean, obviously that was a very rushed job at blending. I'd make sure I had, you know, a smoother lay down than that. Perhaps doing a couple of layers and blending those out. So with my original swatch page, I had a play around and I used an opaque flash paint just to fill in. But I thought I'd just show you quickly how coloured pencil and the Neocolors go over the top of the different paints. So this is over the flash paint, and this is Neocolor 1, and that grips fine. This is it over the SoFlat, and this is it over the acrylic, and it grips pretty well over acrylic, but it's slightly more kind of see-through than with the other two. So that's the Neocolor ones. This is the Neoarts. And they cover just as nicely. Just going back to the comparison between the Neocolor ones and the Neoarts, they are so similar. But just doing it then, I felt like I was having to push ever so slightly harder with the Neoarts. And then the Neocolor 2. A slightly softer experience. So those are all pretty good on the Golden SoFlat, the Lefranc Bourgeois Flash paint and Galleria acrylic paint. And then colour pencil. Sticks really nice there. Sticks really nice there. And then it's just not quite as opaque on the acrylic paint. Do it with white. SoFlat, Flashe, acrylic. Again, just not quite as opaque on the acrylic. So I hope you enjoyed seeing this play around with some different mediums and surfaces. Thanks for joining me. Bye! I went on to play a bit more with that first swatch page, and so I thought I'd just show you like a rather bright picture I did with it. So this was a mixture of the SoFlats, the Flash paints and Neocolor 2s. It was thoroughly enjoyable to do. Bye!